Welcome to the first ever live episode of Gators Gameday. I am Seth Varnadore, joined by Bud Davis. Uh, this is kind of going to be what we do weekly, typically on Saturdays, but Bud is actually going to be in attendance for this first game. So we decided we do the Miami preview a little bit early.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk a little bit of Miami tonight, get kind of their identity, give you a little bit of what they like to do on offense and defense, talk about some of their new additions, which they've got a bunch of them, and then the case for Miami to win, the case for Florida to win. So, Bud, just first game of the year, what are your kind of initial thoughts going into the week?
I'm so excited. Oh man, I tweeted this out. I freaking love this week. There's nothing better in college football. We don't have anything negative to talk about. Everything is in front of us. We have the future in front of us. We can find things wrong with the program the rest of the year, but this week we're all in. Things are great. It's lying. This is the time to lie and feel good and get excited for football. We've got football on tonight. This is great. I'm pumped. I can't wait to be there on Saturday. And yeah, I love it.
And really, Florida and Miami already 1-0 because Florida State lost last week. So everybody started this season on a really high note. So it's always the best time of the year. You get a bunch of games. You got games like you said tonight, games tomorrow. We got games on Saturday, obviously, and then even some Sunday games. So it should be a lot of fun and hopefully good for the Gators. But we'll talk about more about that later. First, let's talk a little bit about Miami. So 2023 team, I think they ended up 7-6, right? Not great. Just kind of Mario and Napier got hired at about the same time. They've both been kind of hovering in the same kind of area. Disappointing. Mario's obviously hasn't had the difficulty in schedule that Napier has had, but his results have been a little bit better, and he's recruited better. So, but really, these are two programs in pretty similar places, I would think, after 2 years of head coach on the job.
I think so. And I think you kind of hit on one of the big differences is I think Miami's been a little bit better at roster construction, or at least closer to what I kind of would map out as an ideal path, which is recruit the trenches really well early, get skill players, bring them in from the portal and kind of patch holes that way and get good pretty quick. And I think they have a lot of expectations in year 3, but we're going into this game, and I think they have a ton of question marks on the roster. I think they've probably had to rely on the portal too much, and we'll get into this, but I think their secondary is pretty trash.
Yeah, they were not great last year, and they lost some guys. I think they lost 28 guys to the portal off last year's team. They brought in 15-ish. Some high-quality players, and we'll talk about them in a second. But first, we wanted to just kind of talk. Let's just talk kind of really general identity stuff in terms of how they like to play. And then we can kind of see if we think it'll change much. So we'll start with their offense. So base 11 personnel, they're getting some 12 personnel, they're getting a little 10 personnel. So most of the time they're playing with one tight end, occasionally they'll play with two tight ends, and sometimes they'll just play with 4 receivers and no tight ends, right? So in the run game, and Bud's got some numbers to kind of back these up, there are a lot of inside downhill. They'll do some inside zone, which to me, I believe this is just inside zone. It's a Mario Cristobal team. They'll want to run the football. They're split zone, right? And then they'll do some duo, which is just kind of a downhill. We got double teams. Looks a little bit like inside zone, but it's more downhill. Some people call it power without the puller. And so it's a really downhill run. The back can read a backer and get vertical. I think that's kind of their base play. You see it here. Florida is similar. Florida will run some zone, inside zone, duo. And, up front, if you don't fit it up right, they can break them. They got some pretty good backs. This back transferred, but they probably replaced him with a better guy.
Yeah.
Fletcher's a good back as well. I think he was dinged, but he's back. Damian Martinez is transferred in. He's good, but you can see here Clemson does not fit this well. What they do, let me show you the wide again here. What Miami will do, They're not super revolutionary, but you'll see here you got formation into the boundary, and you got a bunch. So how do you play bunch? A lot of teams will play 4/3 to the bunch. So when you're taking these four basically from the numbers out to cover these three, well, now I got a light box, and if the safety
Yeah.
doesn't fit the run well, I can get a big play. So not like crazy, but you see the safety misfits, and it breaks for an 80-yard run. In the game, we'll talk about this more. That Miami's had pretty high rushing totals with their backup quarterback here, but I think this play kind of contributed a lot to it. But you just see how they'll move formation, they motion about the national average, so nothing crazy motion wise. But then they'll do occasional gap scheme stuff where they pull guys, but a lot of times when they do that, they've got something attached to it, like a screen, or here they have a reverse.
Mm.
But they're a higher than average screen team. So I think you'll see a ton of screen. Ward is really good at that, and that's something we'll talk about. He's really good with kind of manipulating arm angles and finding open spaces to throw these quick throws. So I'd bet they'll be run a ton of screen. He's probably really good at it. Let me see. I think we had one more screen on there. Yep. So there's gap, and they throw back the other way. And then Shannon Dawson is Dana Holgerson disciple, also coached under Hal Mummy for a little bit. So he runs some air raid stuff in the passing game. Here's just a look at mesh. They can run it from different personnel groupings. Previous play we watched, they ran duo, right? And he bounced it now where they're going to run mesh. So he's the mesh. He's the mesh. He's over the ball. He's the out. The back's coming out here. So just a little air raid staple. So you'll see some air raid staples in there, probably mesh, probably white cross, things like that. And then obviously if you're a good running team, you're going to want to take shots. This one's probably a familiar one to Florida fans. You got a post, an out, and a flat. So it's flood, but with a post. Florida runs this a ton. This can be a shot for you. Pretty good throw there by Tyler Van Dyke. But it's nothing, it's nothing revolutionary.
Yeah, I think you kind of talk about them being a little bit of an air raid. I think they definitely do that in the pass game, but they've got a way more even run pass split than you see kind of a typical air raid system. In general, I think I kind of gives me their overall system. They like 10 a lot, which is kind of interesting. That jumps out. They do
a little
lot
bit more
of,
than average, right?
Yeah, a pretty good chunk. About 10% more. They've got RPOs a fair bit in there, like almost 15% more. So that's going to jump out. They're going to throw the ball a lot. I think it's going to be interesting
You just said RPOs. It took a second to load up, but here's a couple. The last two clips were RPOs.
Oh yeah, let's get them.
Two good examples of them. And then this one. This is, I think, something Wardish will probably be pretty good at because he's really good at catch and throw, really good with a defined read, and like a good ball there. Not a bad ball, but a better ball there is a pretty good play. So a lot of times when they have this gap stuff, they've attached something to the backside of it. So because they're not a huge gap run team, if you look at their numbers.
Not at all.
But yeah, RPO is another part of the game. So
yeah, it's
air raid. Brought that up.
Air raid, RPO, inside zone, like that's kind of their offensive identity. It's interesting. Cam Ward, I think we're going to talk a lot about him, but like he's a wing T high school recruit. So like 0-star, no offers. Like Incarnate Word was the only one. Went out there, set FCS freshman records, all sorts of stuff in an air raid system out there, and then followed his OC to, Wazoo and played there. And so this is his first time kind of going outside of that. And I think he's within his same system, but it's also different. It's not throw the ball the most in the nation like he's been asked to do. So
yeah, it will be. I think it will be a little bit different for him. I think his skill set fits. But when we'll talk about him in detail shortly, but he's an interesting kind of study. Offensively, Miami's identity. Anything else you kind of I think with a Mario Cristobal team, right? It's cliche, but the guy wants to run the football.
Yeah.
Maybe to the detriment sometimes of his quarterbacks.
Yeah,
But
I think you look at it and they were really really good at limiting sacks and scrambles last year. Like that's something that jumps out of the sheets is that crazy. It's like 3%, something low like that. And you know, they lost their center, they lost their left guard, so they got two new guys there. I think Zach Carpenter is a transfer from Indiana. He's pretty good, but you know, it's tough to have a new center, a new left guard, a new QB, and a new running back, a new wide receiver, Sam Brown from Houston. All those guys new
yeah,
first game playing together is in the swamp. Like that's tough.
I think you saw a little bit of that last week with Florida State, right? The year before, you had some guys, you had like a few new guys kind of filling in important spots here and there, right? But the majority of the guys were guys that transferred for a couple years before, had a year there, and then played, right? So we saw this year, if you're plugging in a bunch of new guys, it could be a little bit tougher in an unfamiliar environment, right? They're on the road in Ireland. Probably an odd way to play, but playing in the swamp is a very difficult place to play as well. So offensively, Miami kind of power spread, air raid, kind of an amalgamation of things. They want to run the football. They're going to throw a bunch of screens and try to formation you into some different things, but nothing like wildly
No, it's
revolutionary.
not.
It's just it's solid, college football stuff. So
Yeah.
nothing crazy.
Do you want me
Now,
to throw up the advanced stat graphics? You want me to throw those up?
yeah, if you can.
Let's do it. Let's see. And Seth and I are both a little bit under the weather, so sorry for all the sniffles. All right, so on the left is Miami's play calling sheet, and on the right is Florida's play calling sheet. These are these SIS stats breakdowns we've looked at before. And Miami's usage is here, their relative usage is here. Those are in percents. So if you see green here, that means it's something that's pretty unique to their system. And then it's their performance here. As Florida fans, we want to see purple. Purple's good for us. And then here's our Florida defense. So green is good for us over here. Sacks and scrambles, I think things in red kind of jump out as concerning areas for me and question marks that I'm watching for this game. So sacks and scrambles really low for Miami last year, 3%. That's like nearly the bottom in the nation. Can Florida get through that, new rebuilt interior O-line that Miami's got and get some pressure? Definitely watching that. This 10 personnel and RPO game that Miami's got, Florida was okay last year, against the RPO and didn't see a lot of 10. Wasn't too great against it. So, how
It's
do we
not super prevalent anymore. You don't see a lot of teams going 4 wide receivers. It's mostly kind of a hybrid 11 with a tight end that can catch the ball.
Yeah, Miami's got a good wide receiver core, though.
Yes.
Restrepo, Brown, like that's an area of concern. You're going to see heavy emphasis thrown to these wide receivers and the guys out of the slot. And Florida wasn't great against those last year.
What's interesting is Miami does not throw to their tight ends a ton, and they don't throw to their backs a lot. They get them out in the route, but they didn't throw to them a ton last year. Those are some easy throws, and I think Florida struggled against both those last year.
Yeah.
That's a lot of places where linebackers are covering guys, and outside Shamar James, the linebacker crew last year was not great in coverage.
Yeah. So, I think I am hopeful, Devin Moore, Jason Marshall, like looking at the depth chart, like just a defense makes me feel so much more confident than last year's looking across the board. Screen passes, they throw a fair bit of screens. It's above average for sure. And Florida played screens pretty well last year. If they want to throw screens, I'm fine with it. I kind of have an attitude like I think this is going to be a high scoring game, but I think they're going to have potentially more growing pains than Florida playing away. In the swamp, it's a tough environment, and as long as we're not giving up explosives, I think this game favors Florida. And kind of one of those things is this, no blitz. I highlighted that here because, Seth, you and I have kind of talked about, well, like how would you play Miami as Florida? Do you pressure Cam Ward or do you drop 8? And
No.
I think I'm coming around to this no blitz idea. I think I think if you ask him to hold on to the ball, I don't know if he's necessarily got the comfort level in the system to make a progression. I think he's kind of a one read guy. I know their wide receivers are good, but you can limit the explosives. And if you ask him to beat you, holding the ball and throwing it deep, then yeah, I kind of want to see it.
Yeah, and we've got some clips of him at Washington State where it's interesting. Yeah, there's some teams were dropping 8 on him, some teams dropping, you know, make it look like drop 8, but one guy's a spy, and he struggled at times with that. But we'll get a little bit more to him here in a second. Let's move on to the Miami defense, which I
Yeah.
think we said the Miami offense is pretty. I wouldn't say bad or vanilla, but it's solid college football stuff, but not revolutionary. The
You
Miami
want to do the film first?
Yeah, let's do the film of the Miami defense.
All right.
These guys like to get after it, so
Yeah.
they are not afraid. They're aggressive. I believe Lance Guidry's the
I think
coordinator there. So here's what they like to do a lot. So we'll see from the back here, really. But you see, there's basically 5 dudes on the line of scrimmage. But here they bring the corner. They're not afraid to bring pressure here against Texas A&M. I wanted to show the back end of this, right? So Miami loves to bring 5, or they love to line up in this kind of bear front look where you've got a guy basically on the nose. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's a down lineman. You've got guys in 3s. These guys are he's in a 3, so he's between the guard and tackle. He's more of a 4-eye, but let's just call him a 3, right? And then you guys outside the tackles, right? So it's called a bear front. And why this is really difficult is there are some teams, some offenses that if you get in a bear front, they have very limited amount of protection checks, right?
Yeah.
There are some teams that their only check is, well, we're just going to block this man on man, right? So once you show a bear front, it limits the protection options for the offense, and it can make it really difficult when you bring guys from different places. And you're not going to get a lot of, when you play Miami, I don't think you're going to get a lot of just like straight rush up the field. You're going to get guys moving a ton, guys coming from different places.
Stunts.
So, yes, you're going to get a lot of line moving up front, and you're going to get a lot of bear. I think they got in a ton against, and we'll see some stuff from Florida State. They got in a ton against Florida State.
Oh, Florida State, it's the whole game. And I think
so.
What jumps out to me is how they're fast on that D line.
Yes, they had some, and that's Ruben Bain is obviously a guy to watch. Now they're going to be pretty. I think they've kind of almost totally rotated outside of Ruben Bain. I think the other guy is Mesidor. Outside of them, they've almost like totally flipped the roster in terms of transfers going out, transfers and freshmen coming in. So now Bain is a guy that's got like All-American type potential and is getting a ton of preseason hype. And he's a really good player, but interior wise, there's a lot of new guys. So some guys that had some good, ratings at the portal, but you'll see here, just adding on late. So just do not be shocked to see a bunch of times Miami's rushing 5 guys. Like it's not
the 5-guy rush is like what jumped out to me. They're doing it all the time.
In here, they kind of overload this side. And it looks like they're misaligned almost. Like you see this and you're kind of okay, but they've got some quickness at linebacker, and he just shoots the gap and makes the play there. Right, they're kind of oddly aligned, but they move around and do so much stuff that it can make it really difficult.
Is that an underfront? Is that what an underfront is? Am I making
under will be like a 1 to the strength.
Okay.
Usually most people put a 3 to the strength. But here's what these guys, they're not in a bear front, but this is more of the tight look that a lot of people have gone to. And that's why I think it's a little bit easier now to block the bear front because it's pretty close to the tight front, which a lot of people are running now. So I think offenses are seeing it a little bit more. So they've got to get their protection ready because it's hard. Like if you're a half slide team, it's hard to make this. And so we talked about, getting outside against this is good, but They play these guys off. They turn them back in. They play downhill and aggressive. So
Yeah, they get vertical off those edges so fast.
yes, but you'll see as we go through. Here's another blitz. They bring somebody late. I think they got a hold there as well. But and then a lot of times ball's in the boundary. If the corner's rolled up short side, he's coming a lot of the time. So they'll use him a ton into that boundary. Florida used to do that a ton with Charlie Strong back in the day. They'd bring the corners off the boundary side a lot. Little corner cat. And so that's something they like to do as well. But yeah, this is kind of the Iowa State kind of first popularized the tight. So where I'm in four eyes, and then I try to just kind of kill the interior here, bounce the ball out to athletic guys that can run it down. But they'll bring pressure from everywhere. So like Florida will need to be ready for blitz. That's kind of the number one thing. Get ready for blitz.
I like the FSU game because FSU's in a lot of pistol, a lot of looks similar to what Florida's gets in. So this is kind of a little bit more what I'm expecting for us to see from Miami.
And just because they're in that front doesn't mean you can't run the football. Like you can still run your zone, get vertical, which Florida State does there. With as much, if you're blitzing a ton and you're going to play man behind it with motion, you can find creases, right? You watch the back view of the end zone view of this. You can see guys playing the motion. And that's where the crease comes. Zero's out of position because he's playing the motion. You can still run your boots here. Florida State runs boot. We know Florida wants to run a lot of boots.
Oh, I think this is something we're gonna do 12 of these. This is gonna be Arliss Boardingham and Hayden Hansen.
I think you've got some good info we're about to show. I think Miami struggles covering tight ends, and they struggle. Yeah. I think their back seven struggles in coverage.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not even like a Maui Go has pretty good numbers, but watching him, I don't think he's super comfortable in space. So hopefully, let me pull this down for a second, see if it'll load better. But hopefully, if you want to throw your numbers up while I get this to load,
let's do it.
And then we'll kind of, because the back end's kind of okay. Well, how can you beat this defense a little bit? So, if you want to put the numbers up,
let's tee it up because I think there's some cool shots. Like we went through this tape, there's some cool stuff. Oh, all right, so here's a nice little depth chart for them. I think this is kind of one of those important things. Is in green are kind of matchups I like. These are the replacement transfers, and anytime you've got transfers, especially in the trenches, those are guys I want to attack. I think Wesley Bissaint at linebacker, he's good. He's definitely good. He's not as good in coverage.
And he's light too. He's listed like 205 or something like that.
Yeah. But he's kind of one I want to test, but he might have developed. He's getting a little bit older. I think, the kind of like there's my bitch guys that I want to go after if I'm Florida is I'm throwing after this true freshman, OJ Frederick. And if they sub him out for Jadis Richard, like this guy, he's on the bench. He's second string for a reason. They had to play him a lot last year. He's terrible. If this guy is on the field, we have to throw the ball at him.
Yeah, Miami's defensive backs were pretty bad last year in coverage.
Yeah, and I mean, we're saying that as Florida fans. Our DBs were pretty god-awful last year. So
we can identify it after last year.
Yeah, we've seen it. All right, so on the left is Florida's play call sheet, and on the right is the Miami defense. That sacks and scrambles that these guys generate for Miami, that is very concerning. Like, we're going to have to watch how their defensive ends and linebackers especially go against our offensive tackles, especially our right tackles. We know how much, we talked about in our offensive preview, how much we like to go to the right. I do have some worry about our boot stuff, but we'll kind of see that. But overall, the passing game is where I think Florida's got our biggest advantage. We were a pretty good passing team last year. Miami, not as great of a pass defense. RPOs, I think we're going to have some great film of that. I think that jumps out as a weakness of this Miami defense is playing this RPO game. and then their DBs not great at covering the wide receivers, tight ends abysmal. This is like some of the worst tight end numbers in the country that you could see. So this is the Arliss Boardingham breakout game that I want to see.
In Florida, you see Florida's tight end usage is a little bit above average, and their
12.
success rate and EPA are, in terms of targets, their success rate and EPA are really good.
Yeah.
So that's a good matchup for Florida. I think getting guys match up on Miami's linebackers in pass coverage can be a place where Florida has an advantage. Now, the question is, can you get – I think there's some of these usages are pretty low because Miami gets to the quarterback so well.
That's the next one is these deep target numbers. Miami bad, those safeties suck, but the deep target numbers were 10%, off FBS average because they get to the QB so quick and generate those pressures. These blitz rates, you see that's plus 10%, plus 11%. Good numbers there for them. So the blitz is something we got to know how to deal with. We got to figure out a way to deal with it. If I'm Florida, though, I'm testing this inside run. It was the way a lot of teams attacked Miami last year. It's where they found the most success, and Miami's got replacement guys there. They got transfers. I am testing the inside zone. I'm throwing to the tight end, and I'm throwing RPOs.
Yeah, and I think we got some. I think testing if they do get in a bear look, testing the edges. Now, this is a pretty good individual play here, but testing the edges of the defense. We'll see Florida kind of work the perimeter here as well. Like there's plays that we had.
That one. You go back. That one kind of skipped. I didn't get to see it.
Yeah. This one, was speed option weak.
Oh yeah.
But just making guys make plays in space, I think, is.
Dude, I feel like we could also see a Lagway absolutely crush.
Yeah, so here's Florida against LSU. I think these kind of throws, quick throws to the perimeter, where it's guys, and I'm working on it doesn't really matter interior wide, right? It doesn't really matter what's going on in here.
Doesn't matter who your DEs
on the perimeter, on this right? So these kind of things I think could be advantage throws for Florida, and then like we showed earlier, if you're going to run a lot of man and blitz a lot, if you motion, which Florida likes to motion, and you can get guys matched up, you can make some big plays in the passing game off the motion. Also, the RPO look. Florida State has a couple RPO looks here, where if they're going to be aggressive and feel for run, there's holes behind it. Florida State misses that one.
This is the good one.
They hit this one here.
Oh yeah, this one.
And this isn't too dissimilar to what Florida ran against LSU last year as well.
Oh man, and now with Trey, Badger, and DK, like I look at that against the Miami DBs, and it's like if Florida wins this game, let's go attack there. Let's get
like you're saying, those guys are better catch and run guys, so that might be the plan of attack. If you don't feel like you can hold up to take, because there's chances to get these kind of shots here. Last year they busted quite a bit on the back, or people were able to kind of get over the top of them. Here's one against first play of the game against Texas A&M. Texas A&M throws this, but this guy's running a corner out. Jesus. And they're so aggressive to come down to that if he just waits and throws that, he's could moonwalk into the end zone. Still gets a pretty good play out of it, right? Just get out in space. And then here's later in the Texas A&M game. So this is one where Maui Goa is going to be matched up on the fullback here. And you're going to be aggressive.
Wheel them.
Yeah, so you got to be able to take advantage of aggressive defenses like that, get over the top, get the ball outside on the perimeter. If you can have success. Pushing the ball down the field, I think, is easier said than done against Miami's front. So I would imagine Florida's brought in a lot of guys that are pretty good run after the catch guys. They've got Eugene Wilson's good run after the catch, Badger, That's one of his big things. So, yeah, RPOs, hitting these guys on the run, run after the catch might be kind of a big part of the plan, and not as many vertical shots possibly against this Miami front.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I still think you've got to find a way to take the deep shots and try and get the explosives. I don't think this is going to be a game that gets won 10-7. Like, I think you've
No,
got to.
yeah,
I think you got to score some points, but you know, you gotta figure it out. And I think we've talked about Burke and Jackson, but if OJ Frederic is out there, 180-pound freshman or whatever he is, go bury that guy in the dirt and let Trey Wilson go. Yeah, I'm serious. Put Marcus Burke, bury that guy and go get some yak thrown it to Trey.
Yeah, there's a lot of new guys going to be playing for Miami. On the back end, you have a couple freshman transfers. You have obviously offensive Damian Martinez. You mentioned Sam Brown at receiver. So Miami is really good offensively at the skill positions. And I think the biggest, and the one everyone's talking about, the biggest addition is Cam Ward at quarterback. Like you said earlier, started at Incarnate Word. It was really unheralded recruit coming out of high school. Just blew up at Incarnate Word. I think his freshman year, he had 47 touchdowns, interceptions, 4,600 yards passing. So followed his OC to Wazoo. And some people think he's going to be a first-round draft pick in the NFL. He's got some traits. Do you want to watch? Do we want to watch the video first, or do we want to? We want to watch the video first.
Let's watch the video first.
All right, I've got some Cam Ward videos, so let's watch some Cam Ward. Let's hold up.
I did a tweet today that got a lot of action.
Oh,
even with the Miami fans, and that's how I know it was a good one.
All right, so Cam Ward got a couple games. Just my initial thoughts watching him. He's really good. Really good catch and throw. Like if you let him catch and throw, you give him easy throws, he's going to complete them. He I think when he has a good pre-snap read, he makes quick decisions, gets the ball out of his hands, can be accurate. Here you'll see like a different arm angle. He's athletic and can change angles. So when they do that screen stuff, he's going to be really good at it. It'll be difficult to kind of see here. He gets to a funky angle to get the ball out. He's a good player. You watch the film, he makes a lot of plays. He can make throws from the pocket. This is last year against Oregon. Not perfectly thrown ball, but a really well thrown ball. Against UCLA last year. This throws better. This throws better from the end zone view here. We can kind of see how he has to layer this thing. And he's got some really good throws in this Oregon game. But he's a really good catch and throw player. You can see why people think he's got a chance to be a really good player in the future. But we'll get to some. He's got some issues which needs to clean up to be a first-round pick, in my opinion. But he makes throws with anticipation. He's a good quarterback. I'd feel if you're a Florida fan, I think you feel a lot better with Tyler Van Dyke coming back, right? Because, but there's an interesting comparison we're going to get to in a second with Tyler Van Dyke and Cam Ward, which is kind of a counterintuitive, really. He can do this, extend plays, but this also gets him into trouble at times, extending plays, throwing across his body. Here's one, this is a crazy. Now, I think the score is 38-16 at this point or something late in the game, but this is an insane play and throw on the run. So, he's got a ton of talent. He can extend plays, make throws like that. Here's another one. He kind of extends the play here. He's not a great. What's interesting, he's when you watch him, he's a pretty good runner. His rushing numbers are pretty terrible for his career. for his career, he has 339 rushing attempts for 269 yards.
Yeah, the rushing and the sack numbers kind of surprise me how mediocre they are.
So that was interesting. And I think some of that is because we'll talk, like, he gets sacked a ton. And then this is where I think when you take away his first couple reads, and this is with most college quarterbacks, right? If you take away their initial reads and kind of make him sit there and really work through it, this is where he can he starts to press at times and makes mistakes with the ball. Here organizes a 3-man rush and then spies him. He gets really loose with the football, and we'll talk. There's an astounding number.
Yeah. There's one number that's insane.
But he can get. He'll take risk here from the backfield. You can see this should have been picked. So I think he's a really good player. Like most guys, most college players, I think if you pressure him, obviously his performance suffers a little bit. He does trust his arm a lot, thinks he can make a lot of throws. Like thinks he can throw this over the top of this defender, throws an interception against UCLA. This is a really difficult throw. Probably has something coming back inside here based on the coverage. But right, thinks I can fit it over that guy. That's tough. And then here.
This looks familiar.
Drop 8.
Spy.
UCLA did a pretty good job of being able to get pressure with 3. They had a pretty good front. And I think this is the kind of way Florida may have to deal with him, where it looks like a pressure look, but they're really only bringing 4.
Yeah.
So you can maybe get the benefit of blitzing without having to bring a bunch of guys, so you can play coverage behind it. Florida showed this in the past, this a couple of years ago, right, where they bring 2 in the A gap, drop these guys out. So you're getting the benefit of a blitz without having to sacrifice pressure, like we saw the Miami defense will blitz and, hey, man, play coverage back there. We're going to get there fast enough, so we're not worried about it. So, I think that's kind of what you got to do against Ward is that could be the plan where you bring some of these creepers and simulated pressures and try to get him out of rhythm, because when he can just play in rhythm, catch and throw, he's really good. So now he does have a couple issues when we're talking pressure. Number 1, the most glaring. I thought this was fake when I first saw it.
I thought it was fake too.
He's fumbled 46 times.
That's insane.
In his college football career. He's fumbled 46 times and thrown 26 interceptions. So he's pretty loose with the football.
Those are the stats where it's like, this is where it's like Vegas is -2. I have a tough time being like, Miami's going to come in here and win this game, or Florida's going to clearly win this game. I can very easily imagine Miami having a 2-3 turnover game. So many new guys in the swamp, a turnover-prone QB. Like, we've seen so many guys who are great quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, I was at that game 2018 when he threw that pick. Like, I was right there. Like, I remember he was not Joe Burrow in that game. The swamp gets to people, especially first-year QBs. They can go in there and struggle. A lot of guys being asked to make the first start. And I think the Cam Ward turnover numbers just blow me away. If Florida can't get a turnover, I think it's going to be tough to win this game. But I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah, and 46 fumbles, 26 interceptions. According to PFF, he's been sacked 142 times in his career, which is wild for a guy that is athletic as he is, or appears to be, right? I thought interesting, his pressure to sack ratio. This is something you're hearing go around a lot more, especially around the draft. Like CJ Stroud, super low, was really low in college. AR was really low in college. They're starting to feel like this translates pretty well to the NFL. Like Caleb Williams was really high. That was one of the questions on him. Kim Ward, for his career. Now, last season at Washington State, he was a 24.9% pressure to sack ratio. So that means almost a quarter of the time they got pressures, he was sacked.
Yeah.
For his career, this is including Incarnate Word, because I think one of the things on him, and this is, I think, my biggest question is, okay, well, his supporting cast in Miami is going to be a lot better than it was at Washington State. So that should elevate him. But his supporting cast in Incarnate Word, like Incarnate Word's a really good program for that level. So his supporting cast there was pretty good. He was still 18.2 and 17.9% pressure to sack ratio in his 2 seasons he played there.
A little bit better. I mean,
yeah, but it's a little bit better. I think Tyler Van Dyke last year was like 12.
Yeah. And I think that's
people think is a stiff statue. He was like 12%.
You and I were talking about this. How much is the Miami O-line overrated?
And that's, I think, yeah, let's finish up with Ward real quick. So yeah, we can talk about that too. But that pressure to sack ratio, that's my big, like, is this a consistent issue? His time to throw, I looked at Mertz last year's time to throw was 2.35 seconds when clean. Time to throw for I think Van Dyke when clean was 2.35. I think Ward was closer to like 2.6, 2.7, 2.8. So he's holding the ball a little bit longer, even though I just showed you a bunch of clips where he's getting the ball out of his hands really quick. So
he's basically first read or bust.
I think he's he wants to make big plays a lot, and that kind of can cause him to hold the ball a little bit too long. But so that's my question with him. So we got this comment, which is, if he's such a good QB, how he doesn't QB good?
That's it. He has a negative EPA. He threw the ball fifth most in FBS, and SIS has him as a negative EPA.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Yeah, it's a very, he's going to be a fascinating guy to watch, because I think a lot of the stuff around him is, okay, well, his supporting cast at Washington State sucked. Okay, he's got a really good supporting cast at Miami. Like, their skill talent is really good.
Yeah.
Up front, pretty good.
Tackles are great.
Yeah, so you've got everything you need. So now, will they be able to put it all together first game? If you're a Florida fan, you're hoping not. But we'll see as it goes along the year. So, but real quick, let's talk, because I think we can kind of spin out of Cam Ward into, okay, so how does Miami win this game? I think they win if Cam Ward plays well, if acclimation is not an issue, if he kind of lives up to the hype. And I think the other case would be, they dominate Florida on both lines of scrimmage.
I think it's, if the Miami wide receivers are absolutely toasting the Florida DBs and making it easy on Cam Ward, they win. I got my notebook. I got my notes.
Yeah.
And so I think that's number one. And the Miami running backs, if their interior O-line is as good as it was last year, and they've got good running backs, and they're just able to run the ball, they don't have any turnovers, I think those types of things make it easy for Miami to score, make it shorten the game. Like, if I'm Miami, I'm trying to keep it low scoring. I think those are things that jump out to me. And then if their linebackers and defensive ends are so good against our offensive tackles that we can't leverage our own wide receiver advantage against their DBs.
Yeah, that's kind of how if Miami wins, they will have kind of dominated Florida on the line of scrimmage, especially defensively, and made it really difficult for Florida to get the ball out.
I think Miami's going to have a lot of stuff designed for those, those boot actions that we like to run. They're gonna have stuff for that, and they've got guys to get out there quick to shut those down. So I struggle to see. I can see the game where Florida is trying to run a lot of those boot actions, and we're just getting sacked or thrown away. Mertz is getting beat up. Like, that's where I see this game going bad.
That's a lot of third and longs, a lot of, not too dissimilar, I don't think, to Utah last year.
Yeah.
maybe not the penalties, but kind of the similar where anytime you try to push the ball down the field, you're getting beat up. You're unable to run the football and to kind of establish the running game. I think that's kind of the Miami win scenarios. It's similar. Florida, it turns out similar to Utah, and then if they can get comfortable on offense.
Yeah, if Florida doesn't have an efficient passing game, if we don't have a quick passing game, I think we lose this.
Yeah, I think you got to take advantage of some of your matchups on the edges, right? So, in which I think is not like a, it's not a. That's why this is such a tight game, and that's why the Miami's favored. Is they do have some guys coming back that are proven commodities in some important positions. But let's talk. I think you're ready to get.
Let's put on the Homer glasses. Let's have fun.
All right, so let's talk. How does Florida win? So here's my question: if I've got the Homer goggles on, the Homer glasses on, I think one big question is how good is Miami's offensive line really? That's one of my because you're hearing them talked about as one of the top in the country. And you go look at it, and they were pretty good. I know you got some stuff where they were like really high in like non-blown block percentage, and there's some metrics that say this is a really good offensive line. But I'm watching some tape, and like North Carolina State is in the backfield a ton, and then I go through and I start looking at their yards per carry. So I think it's a decent metric, right, to look at.
Yeah.
And you start looking at it. If you take out a game against Miami of Ohio, you take out a game against Bethune-Cookman, and a game against Temple.
Such a trash schedule.
Yeah, Temple is so bad. Temple Bethune-Cookman might be a pretty good game, actually. If you take out those three, if you just take out those three games, they go from over 5 yards a carry to 4.4 yards a carry, which is still good, better than Florida was last year, but it's not elite. And then you go start looking game by game a little bit and some of the tougher teams they played. Yeah. And they were under 4 yards a carry, which I think under 4 yards a carry is bad. Like we can say that's pretty bad. They were under 4 yards a carry 5 times last year. Florida, for reference, was only under 4 yards a carry 4 times all last season. And one of the games they were over was the Clemson game where they rushed 38 times for 211 yards, but they had that 80-yard rush we showed on film. If you take that away, the other 37 rushes, they averaged 3.5 yards a carry. So, are they like a bully that's like beating up on bad defenses, or are they, it's long season. That's just how it is sometimes. I don't know. That's my question because
there's a reason they only won 7 games.
Yeah, that's kind of my question. If it's such a great offensive line, how do you only win 7 games?
Yeah,
because it's not like they wanted to run the football. They had good running backs. So if you could just physically impose your will on somebody, you should have been able to win a bunch of games. Yeah. Now they probably should have won 8 if Mario doesn't just takes a knee, but still there's that question. And then
who is the loser of in-game coaching, Billy versus Mario? Is golly, it's brutal.
I'm not as down on Billy in game, but
maybe not.
He does make some
special teams.
Yeah, he does make some interesting decisions. He's one to put himself out there.
All right, wait back. Let's put the goggles. We got.
Well, the other thing. Oh, he's great. The other thing with the Miami offensive line, this is kind of my. So last year they allowed 100. They only allowed 16 sacks for the year, but they allowed 119 pressures. Okay, so if you put Cam Ward's career pressure to sack ratio just against those amount of pressures, that number goes up to about 25 sacks.
Yeah, this is how we should do it. This is statistics.
So, if Cam Ward just brings his career average pressure to sack ratio to the same amount of pressure last year, while they have to replace 2 guys up front, they're allowing a lot more sacks. So, like we said, Tyler Van Dyke was about like 12%. So you're almost, last year Cam Ward was like double the pressure to sack ratio. Tyler Van Dyke. So that's kind of those are my kind of questions. I think they got good skill guys. I think the backs are good. I think the receivers are good players. Like I think they're all Senior Bowl watch list guys. So they're getting NFL looks. I think they've got some good guys up front, but like, is it projection that they've got young guys that are going to take a step? Because you're losing your center, who is an NFL guy, and you're losing the left guard who I think made a team.
Yeah.
So you're replacing them. Now Carpenter, I think, had some pretty good numbers at Indiana, but still breaking in a new guy.
There's a reason he is going to Miami and not the NFL.
Yes, that is always the thing with older guys. That's what they got back, a fifth-year senior. If he was a really good player, would he have gone to the NFL? Those are the kind of questions. So, what are your kind of questions with their offense? Is that kind of where you're at too?
I think my big ones, are Cam Ward. Is Cam Ward good? I'm kind of out on that. I think the receivers worry me and are good. Backs I'm okay on. I think the interior line I'm pretty convinced is not as good. And Malago, the left tackle, I think he was fine last year. I think he was probably the weak link of the two, or right tackle. He's right tackle.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Really highly rated dude, but actually stats are okay, just fine. But he was also young.
Yeah, I think that's why I think there's some of its projection. Like they say, okay, he's going to take the step and be that 5-star.
I think for me, it's so hard to imagine a unit gelling for the first time in the swamp, in the first half of the swamp, and getting it all figured out. Yeah. Like, I feel like it's very easy to imagine that Miami offense derailing, and particularly struggling to get the run going. I like the interior of Florida's defensive line. I like our linebackers a lot. I think we have potential at the defensive ends, and I could see Miami struggling to get that run game going. And then if that's the case, I think kind of my preference is let's play back a little bit. I think you have, one clip of maybe the UCLA defense where they're playing 5 yards off these guys, taking away a lot of the easy throws and making Cam Ward drive the field. I don't think he can do it.
Yeah, a guy that's turnover prone like that, you kind of, the more chances, the more plays you make him make, the more chances you get of him making a mistake, I think is the thought, right?
If he's negative EPA on it, like on 500 attempts last year, that's a great sample size. Let's play that game.
Yeah. So, I think Florida wins if Miami's offense, if a couple areas don't live up to the hype. I think their backs and receivers are going to be good.
I think this is a game where I like both offenses, against both defenses. I think this is a game where the offenses on both sides look better than both defenses. But I think the potential for Miami's offense to derail is significantly higher than Florida's.
Especially, a lot's made of, hey, Cam Ward's playing. He's played in some pretty tough environments. Oregon's pretty tough. Washington's pretty tough. It's not. I mean, maybe this could be biased talking, but you can't tell me those places with 50,000 people are louder than these SEC venues. Like, I don't think it's physically possible. So, there's that.
Get a bowl game. He didn't get to use the headsets last year.
Yeah, and then you have a center. So a lot of times your center is the guy making calls. So a new center that's played in the Big Ten, but those environments don't get loud. There's a lot of people, but it's not that loud. So that could be something as well. So I think if Florida wins, there's issues gelling, and maybe quarterback and those new linemen don't quite live up to the hype. Yeah. Defense. How do you think if Florida wins, what do they have to do on offense against the Miami defense?
This is like my favorite thing we're going to talk about. This is like I think this is like what I'm most excited about and how I see this game actually being won. And thing that gives me the most confidence is year 2 Mertz.
Yeah.
We see transfer QBs take such a big step in year 2. Year 2 Mertz with 3 real wide receiver threats and 3 wide receiver threats whose skill set complements how you would attack this defense in winning one-on-ones, winning things like slants, getting pop passes, like things like that. You could do a pop pass with any of these guys. RPOs, play action. Like, I think we're going to see a DJ Lagway play action RPO pop, like RPO, just like go for a touchdown. I'm going to plant my flag.
The camera's going to pan to Bud Davis in the crowd going insane.
Yeah, south end zone. I'm going to be there, just like losing it. But like that one play against FSU, it's like, oh my God, those linebackers are so aggressive. Eat that up, turn it against them.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, you got to use their aggressiveness against. I think also Florida's tight ends. You saw that. Arlis Boardingham. When the coaches talk about him, they talk about him as a mismatch player and a matchup player. Yeah. Well, I think if you feel that way, if you get him matched up on these backers, I think he's got a chance to make some plays. So, and he's really good run after the catch too. So that's something the Florida coaches have talked about. So you may not have time to take the deep shots, but you may get your explosives with a catch and run.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I want to see our inside zone game against their interior D line.
Yeah, Florida's with Damian George kicked inside. Jake Slaughter had a pretty good year last year. I think you got to feel like you're pretty stout in the middle. At least like George is a big dude, and he's played a bunch of football at this point. So I think they know what they got in him. So yeah, that'll be if you can kind of mitigate their pass rush. Like you can't rush the passer if the ball's being run right at you, right? So
yeah,
that can be helpful. Ruben Bain's a handful, but try to mitigate him with boots and things like that. And I think that's your recipe for success. And then work the perimeter, make those guys tackle in space because you do have a lot of really good run after the catch players.
If Montrell is back, I think that's actually underrated for this game. I think he's the type of running back that I would expect to do well against a team like Miami. That's a little bit smaller but fast, and he's just a little bit bigger, a little bit slower, a little bit less explosive. I think he kind of is what we want to run against them. I like him a lot.
I'll tell you one thing that I just want to say it publicly. When you get a chance to watch the All-22, Montrell is a stud. Like, you don't see some of the stuff he does on, like, the TV. The more you get a chance to watch him, like, man, this guy's really good. Like, I don't know how good I don't know if he's, like, elite, but when you get a chance to kind of see the end zone views of some of these things, you're like, man, this dude is really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's underrated.
Full speed.
I hope he's actually back. I'm skeptical. All right, I wrote down things I feel good about. UF wide receivers against Miami DBs. Mertz in year 2. The left side of UF's O-line. I haven't gotten to say that in a while. Like, we have a side of our O-line that I actually feel good about. Like,
there you go.
Yeah. And Cam Ward in the swamp and the UF tight ends.
Yeah.
Slants, RPOs, pop passes.
Yeah, I think all that matches kind of the film and the numbers you were able to give us. So I think there's a good marriage there. And that's what we're trying to do here at Gators Game Day. We're trying to find the marriage of the numbers and the film. To try to show
can we do some hot takes? Hot takes.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
A hot take is I think DJ Lagway could have as many touchdowns as Graham Mertz in this game.
Oh, well, that is a hot take. That's very interesting.
I think he could have two touchdowns in this game. One throwing, one running.
Well, that would be beautiful. This is not so much a hot take as I think if this is a wild prediction that if it comes true, I think Florida wins. If Florida has something that if it happens, I think Florida wins. If a Florida defensive lineman has an interception or even a pass deflection, because that means they're running creepers and Ward's a little confused throwing the ball. So I'd watch for that to see if maybe you can sneak one because he likes to get the ball out of his hands so quick. Maybe you can make him feel like he got pressure and he throws one. Des Watson would be beautiful, but we'll settle for anybody. But yeah, like one of those ends dropping back, dropping and trying to make a quick throw. That's my wild
We
Like,
haven't even talked about Ron Roberts. How did that not?
no, that's kind of the other thing. I think if you think Florida's going to win, you think he's going to have a really calming. His presence is going to have like a calming effect, and you'll feel a lot better on knowing that you're in the right stuff every time. Like I thought Armstrong did a pretty decent job at times, but there's also other times where, we talked about when we watched the defense that, like Saban knew, okay, I got to get out of this, or like I can't just stick in our normal defense. I got to change because what they're trying to do to me. There were times maybe Armstrong you feel like didn't see it that fast, and was like, all right, well, this is what we do. Let's just stay with it. We're maybe a more veteran guys more willing to be like, all right, that's going to be tough for us. We got to change it to this. So I think you feel pretty good with him at the helm, and I'm excited to see what's different. I don't know if it'll be different or if it'll just be better executed.
Yeah.
So
you got a score? What are you thinking?
No, I don't. What is the what is the over under for this game? I'll look that. Do you have a score? I want to hear what you got. Then
All right. I think I was thinking about this.
I know Miami at the last was a 2.5 point favorite.
2.5.
Yeah, I would. It's interesting that
I'm
seeing a lot of people pick
Florida by 16 or 17. I think this is Florida 34, Miami 16, Miami 17.
Yeah, I'm not quite there. So the point total is 54.
This is where it's the first week, Seth. We have all season to be negative. We have all season to use the numbers we've got and the observations we've got to be reasonable. But this is the first week. I want to have fun with it.
Yeah.
I think Florida is going to win this game by more than 2 scores. And I think we're going to have turnovers that get us there. And I think we're going to have some DJ Lagway RPO touchdown, Arliss Boardingham breakout game. And I think DJ Lagway do some kind of speed option thing like that with Trey. Yeah. God, just eat their lunch.
Yeah, I week 1, I would lean more towards like a 28-24 type game.
That's what I'm seeing a lot of.
So I think it's not going to be crazy high scoring, but yeah, I don't know. It should be. I mean, just on paper, it should be a pretty good matchup. And that's hopefully Florida comes out victorious here. So I think that's pretty much it for our first kind of preview. I don't think they'll typically be this long once we get in season because we won't have a full off season's worth of things to talk about and get in. And then these will typically be on Saturday.
Yeah.
Kind of up to 10 minutes before kickoff. So we'll do it, and then we'll give you guys enough time to get some drinks, go to the bathroom, that kind of thing.
Let's try and hop on halftime and post game talk. I'll try it. Stadium's got Wi-Fi. I'll try and talk.
Yeah, so we'll try to get on at halftime and talk through. We'll have some advanced stat stuff from probably Game on Paper, right? And then I'll try to pull the video live, so we'll have some things to watch, a couple plays here or there, or maybe Florida's had a great play and they're at a real big advantage using this, or Miami's got Florida in a bind. We'll try to show those and what we think might happen in the second half, and then hopefully we get back together for a post-game victory celebration as Bud's heading out of the swamp and training. It's great to be a Florida Gator with everybody. So
it's gonna be awesome. I can't wait.
So enjoy the weekend, folks. We'll be back hopefully at halftime of a big Florida lead, but we'll see. Thank you guys for watching the first live edition of Gators Game Day. We'll see you guys on Saturday. Go Gators.
Hey, go Gators, guys.